Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview about what we think makes a good collaborative R&D proposal and how the KTNs can help you. And you might be thinking, why are we well placed to do this? Well, like David said, one of our roles is to help people generate new collaborations and obtain funding successfully. So we've worked and helped with a lot of TSB competitions in the past. By doing that, we've got a good feel of what works well, what doesn't, what scores highly, what doesn't, and so we get to see, understand the process a lot better, and hopefully we can bring this knowledge to you and help you be successful. Okay, so this presentation is basically myself and particularly other colleagues who some are here today, some who aren't. We've just sat down and said what the main points we think makes a good proposal, and we've listed those here. So we think they are a strong business case, a credible plan for research and development, the right consortium, a clear need for support, and alignment to the competition. I'm going to talk about the first four of those today in this presentation. I won't really focus much on the alignment to the competition. That's something it's probably better to do on a one-to-one chat later on, but I'm going to go through all those points today. It's just to say, there's a little disclaimer at the bottom there. The points on these slides are not in the order of the application questions, and they don't cover all the questions in the application process. They're basically just to give you a general overall feel about what makes a good proposal. So first of all, every project must have a really strong business case. Like David just said before, the TSB is all about helping generate new business projects which are going to be successful. So you've got to base it around a strong business case, not just something that's maybe interesting to you or something like that. So the questions you've got to kind of answer or address are, what's the needs, the market need or the benefit that this project will address? A really crucial one is, what is the current market like? So how big is the market you're going to target? What are the dynamics of that market? How is it likely to grow in future years? So often it's good if you can say something like, look, the UK market might currently be worth 20 million, but within 5 years it's predicted to go to 100 million. Those kind of predictions or calculations are also useful. And as well as doing that for UK markets, if you're going to target any international markets, say the US or China or things like that, again, if you can bring in similar calculations, they're always very useful. The third bullet point there is probably one of the most important in the whole application process. How will the industry partners profit from success? When and how much? And it's all about quantifying the return on investment. So if you say, look, the partners are going to benefit, say, after 5 years, after the end of the project, by an extra 10 million or 20 million, whatever it is, the assessors can then rate that back to how much money you're asking, how much grant you're requesting, and you can calculate a return on investment. And you can then use that, or the assessors can then use that to compare, I'm only getting a 1-to-1 return here, I'm getting a 1-to-10 return in another project. So that's a crucial thing. As well as the direct financial benefits to all the partners in the project, it's also important to talk about the wider benefits of the project. Are there any other social or environmental or other economic benefits that will accrue from the project, and discuss all of those. Is there anything in the project that will be made publicly available for wider exploitation? Unlike other funding mechanisms, the TSB does not require that everything's made public, but if there's anything which is not going to damage the commercial interests of the partners which you can make public, mention that. Describe the route to market and the development gap between a successful project outcome and a profitable application. So that's things like, look, the project might finish after 3 years, it might need another 3 years and X much investment before it's going to be successful. So if you can talk about those things, it basically helps show that you've thought about the project and how you're going to turn it into a successful product or service. At the bottom there, show awareness of and plans to address any regulatory or registration hurdles. So is there any legislation that might be relevant to your project which could be a barrier? Talk about those issues and say how you're going to overcome them, and are they likely to be a problem or not. Okay, another crucial thing in every good project is having a credible plan for R&D. And like I said, it's all about outcome-focused research, what product or service you're going to get to market. And it really is R&D as well as research. You've got to give enough time within the project for development, so it's as much about D as it is R, include that as well. Explain the risks in the project and how they'll be mitigated, so you'll be asked to explain things like technical, commercial and environmental risks, and you'll be asked to rank them. I would mention definitely all of those things, even if there is no, say, environmental risks, really state that rather than just looking like you haven't, like you ignored the question. Provide a clear and simple management structure and plan, so say, who's going to be leading the project, how often are you going to meet in person, how often are you going to have telephone meetings, all those kind of things, and explain it in good detail so you know, as well as having a good research idea, you're going to be able to carry it through and be successful. Okay, it's all about having the right consortium as well, and you can have horizontal or vertical consortia, so you could have two companies which are quite similarly aligned in the same space, or you might have, say, a farmer and breeder and a processor and a supermarket all in the same consortium. And I don't think there's any one like ideal consortium size or structure. Basically, you know, it's bigger isn't necessarily better, or smaller is not necessarily better, vice versa. I think it's very much the case, whatever the project needs to be successful and get to market. So, you know, I mean, for example, I wouldn't recommend a large project where you might have some people who are actually not going to contribute much. You know, that's not necessarily a good thing. You've got to explain why these partners, why they're all involved, and what makes it a strong consortium. If there are global markets in mind, explain how you'll access them. So again, if you say, you know, we're going to try and target the American market or something like that, how are you going to access that market? Do you have an existing relationship with their supplier there, or an existing collaborator there, something like that? The last bullet point there, again, show how all the partners have an active role to play and how they each benefit in some way. So that's a key point. You know, you don't want any passengers in projects. So it's interesting, sometimes you'll proofread an application and you'll get to the last page and you'll say, actually, there's a partner here who's requested, say, £200,000 or something like that. And that's the first time you've seen the name in the application. You think, hang on, what are they doing? Why are they in there? So you've got to illustrate, you know, the role of each partner and why they're actually involved. Okay, there's got to be a clear need for support. And what you're asked to do is explain why the project would not go ahead without TSB support, or why it be significantly delayed or reduced in scope. And so TSB asks two questions. Have you explained and justified why you're not funding the project yourselves? And have you explained how the project would be undertaken differently with TSB investment? I wouldn't worry about either of those questions. For the first question there, you can make arguments like, okay, we're not funding this ourselves because you might be a small company with a limited R&D budget. You might have existing research budget committed to, say, core research projects, things like that. Or it could simply be the element of risk. You know, TSB are happy to fund projects with risk involved, and you know, it's the same from a company point of view. You know, you maybe need extra support to go into something which is slightly more risky. And in terms of the second question, how this project might be undertaken differently without TSB investment, I mean, things like, look, you can do the project much more quickly on a much greater scale, or you can do all these things to stop maybe foreign competitors coming in and getting to market before you do, things like that. And the last point there is, you know, you want to try and show you've got a realistic prospect of success, but sufficient uncertainty that there's a need for research and development. So, like David was just saying, you know, TSB take a portfolio approach. They understand that everything's not going to be successful, so there is, you know, risk involved, but they don't want to necessarily back something which is, you know, got no chance of being successful. Okay, some general tips. As David was saying, agree the key points of the collaboration agreement as soon as possible. I mean, it's surprising how many projects can collapse either at the application stage or, you know, maybe just before the deadline for submission, something like that. Or actually, unfortunately, once the project's been approved for funding. Now, that's a real shame. Obviously, a lot of time goes into these applications, so you don't want that to happen. So try and agree these things as early as possible. Be clear, concise, and realistic in the application. You don't have much space, so you've got to be, there's no room for waffle, basically. Don't assume that assessors are experts in your field or your subject. What I mean there is the TSB pick from a pool of assessors who've got general knowledge in a particular subject area, but they won't necessarily know every acronym or every technical term. So, you know, explain things and don't, you know, leave it up to them going away and looking something up. They won't have time to do that. Again, don't carry any passengers. You know, everyone's got to have an active role in the project. And the last bullet point there, provide evidence wherever possible. So you can't just say, look, we think the market in the UK is 20 million. Why is it 20 million? How have you worked that out? It's because there's X many million dairy cows which are worth X much. And you do those kind of sums and calculations and back up all your claims wherever possible. The second bullet point there, explain all the financing. So don't just put say, look, this particular partner's asking for this much money. Explain what you're going to use the money for. Is it going to be spent on labour? Is it going to be spent on materials? All those kind of things. So the assessor can say, actually, you know, this is a good value for money, or actually, why they're spending that much, you know. Check all your deadlines carefully. So, like David was saying, there's actually a deadline to register for these competitions before you actually submit the application, usually about 1 week before the deadline. So, I would usually recommend, if you're interested in the competition and there's a chance you're going to apply, register just in case, even if you don't submit in the end. Don't leave it too late to ask questions or submit. So, particularly, if you want to ask someone from a KTN a question, or if you want to ask the TSB a question, you've got to do that in good time so you can respond. And the same, if you're asking for things from your partners as well, financial information and stuff like that, in big companies it can sometimes take a long time. So, and lastly, I'd just like to say, write a proposal that excites and inspires. And what I mean by that is the assessors might have quite a few applications to look at. How are you going to make yours stand out? So it's going to be revolutionary or change your industry or things like that. So make it really interesting and look like it's going to fly. Okay, just the last part of the presentation. Just going to say how the KTNs can help you through this process, basically. So apologies for the buzzwords here, but our slogan is our role is to connect and catalyse innovation. And what we try and do is we work with funders and investors like the Technology Strategy Board and the research base to drive business innovation in companies. So how can the KTNs help with this competition? We can provide you with advice on project scope and eligibility criteria. So with project scope, you think, does this quite fit or not? We can give you advice on that. And it's often the case we might say, actually, it doesn't fit with this competition, but there's a competition coming in 2 months' time or 6 months' time, which it might be better suited to. So if you're ever unsure, please do ask. The same with eligibility criteria. Like David said, there is a guide for applicants, but it's between 60 and 90 pages long. It's quite long. So we can often say, actually, that type of partner is not eligible, or you can't do that kind of thing within this project. So please do shout up with those kind of questions. We can help with identification of potential partners as well, be it industry or academic. So within the Biosciences KTN, we've got about 4,000 members of our network. We've also got the Electronics and Sensors KTN here today. Again, they've got a similar size network with different expertise to ours. So it may be you know all the partners in, say, agriculture or aquaculture, but you don't know actually people who can provide technology. Please do speak to us or, again, the guys from Electronics and Sensors KTN. One of the most important things we can do is, though, helping review draft proposals. So if you speak to us in good time, we can give you feedback on proposals before you submit them. So we can say, actually, you haven't really answered question 1 here, you need to do this, this and this, or you need to provide more information on this section, those kind of things. So happy to do that. But like I said, the key thing is speak to us as early as possible if you do want to do this. If it becomes in the last week before the deadline, we might not be able to help, but if you let us know, we can schedule something in. Okay, and as David alluded to earlier, we've done quite a lot of this in the past, so we've got quite a good track record now. There was another competition which quite a lot of you were involved in 2 years ago called Sustainable Protein Production. There was a total of 29 projects funded there, and out of those we helped 17 get successfully funded. So we've got a good track record. We know how to help you get a project, write a good application basically. And the value of all these projects overall was 18 million, so it was quite successful. If you want more information, so all the KTNs have a website, their own individual website on what's called the Connect platform. And what you can do is you can go to these websites and access relevant information like the competition documents. All the presentations from today will be there as well. Hopefully, if the video works, we'll have the videos up there and things like that. So, as well as that, we send out alerts saying, look, the competition's now open. You need to submit your application. And what you need to do is there's 2 web groups down the bottom. Don't worry about taking these links down. Again, we'll send you them later on. But if you go to these web links, and what you need to do is the crucial thing is to select join this group, and then you'll be signed up to receive email alerts. So the first group is the group for this competition, which is on our website. The second group is a group hosted by the Electronic and Sensors KTN called eAgri, and that basically looks at the application of things like electronics, sensors, and ICT to agriculture. So that's very relevant as well. But like I said, I'll send you those links later on. Lastly, in terms of contacts here today who you can speak to from the Biosciences KTN, it's the 3 teams, so it's the animal team, the plant breed team, and the food team that are most relevant to this competition. We've got Hugh. Is Hugh, do you want to put your hand up? So Hugh's over there if you want to speak to Hugh. We've got Kezia just here, himself from the animal team. We've got Tom, who's just here, and Aurora, who's working the camera for the plants team. And we've got Serena just at the front from the food team. So please do come and speak to us, or after the workshop as well, equally do get in touch. And like I said, we're co-organising this workshop with the Electronic and Sensors KTN. And like I said, they've got a whole area of expertise different to ours, so they're very worth speaking to. You know, you might think, actually, we've got a great project, or we need to record X, Y, or Z, but we don't know how to obtain this sensor. We need a company to speak to or an academic to speak to. So please do to speak to them to identify partners in that area. The 3 main contacts are shown there, but like I said, Carlos Huggins is here today. If Carlos is just at the back there, please do speak to him. Or again, if you don't have time to take these contacts down now, we'll pass them on later on. And lastly, I'd just like to thank all our sponsors, and I'd be happy to take any questions if anyone has any.